All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Say What I Mean, and welcome to Polly with us. And of course, I got my man Heen with us. We were just having a very interesting offline conversation that we're not going to bring online right now. But
Well,
how
I
you feeling
mean,
today?
I'm good. I'm good. You can't talk about it in some states, not all. So yeah, but I'm solid, man. I'm solid. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm with that daddy life right now,
That's right. That's
so
right.
getting adjusted to that.
It's
But
about 2 months now, right? It's like 2 months, 6 weeks.
not yeah, 6 weeks, month
Yeah,
and a half.
month and a half. Yeah, six
Yeah,
weeks. Yeah, damn. Okay, nice, nice, nice. That's
yeah,
what's up.
yeah. She's cool, learning real quick. She already trying to say, hey. I'm just like, oh, she taking after her father with the sharp wit already. She's doing really good though.
That's good. That's good. I'm happy.
Like the funniest thing about having a child, right? She like two different babies, right? From I say around 6, 7 in the morning to about 4 o'clock.
Hmm.
Sweetest baby ever. Like I don't know what happens after 4 o'clock, but she just starts wilding out. Like she gets mad fussy. She be trying to fight us. Like yo, she be hitting me. She's all like my mother don't believe me, right?
Hmm.
But I'm like, nah, she really be hitting us. Like she gets mad. She already got good form punches,
Oh no.
like so. I do a little bit of boxing
Right.
myself.
That's where she gets it
So,
from.
there we go again. My hands is nice. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? And I don't mean I'm a hand model. You know what I mean? Like these hands is really it's really nice. But
Well,
but
hers
she
are too, apparently.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's not a game. It's not a game. But yeah, she's taking after me. She hit me in the jaw the other
See,
day when she be freaking out. So
see, you got your hands too.
yeah, so like when my wife, the funniest thing is when my wife breastfeed, right? And if it's not coming out fast enough, or she feels like she's not getting enough, she starts like hitting her there.
Oh
She be
no.
like,
Oh
but
no.
it doesn't hurt because she's so small now. But like, yeah, I was just like, yeah, it's cute now, but when she get older, we got to work with that little
Yeah,
temper.
that's a problem.
But she's cool. She's smart, very smart. When she's cooling already, she tried to talk back to us already. And like people don't believe me because she's so young. But yeah,
That's
so it's
good.
going.
Got a baby genius there with hands.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Got high hopes.
Yeah.
People gonna think it's a game because she's probably gonna be small. But it's not gonna be no game.
Hmm.
Maybe I'm going to definitely have her in either judo, maybe jujitsu. I teach her boxing myself. Oh yeah,
Right.
no, it ain't going to be no games.
That's what's up, man. Yeah, get her in like some karate classes or taekwondo or something, man, and
Nah, nah,
have her like being the first grade bully and stuff.
nah. We ain't doing
I
karate,
know.
taekwondo. We
Or
starting
jujitsu,
off early with either
Muay
gonna be
Thai.
jujitsu. Yeah, Muay Thai is cool too. I did a little bit of Muay Thai. I just suck at kicking.
Mm,
I'm not that flexible, but I can do some leg kicks. That's all
okay.
right.
Okay.
But I can elbow, I could clinch. Matter of
Okay.
fact, I messed up my wrist like a few years ago clinching doing movie tie.
Okay. Okay.
You ever did any martial arts?
No, I did. Well, when I was young, I was like, I got to like, I did taekwondo when I was a kid. That was like,
I did too.
yeah, everybody did that. I think like every kid that grew up like in the 80s was like into karate and taekwondo stuff. But that was
You get
about
your
it.
black belt?
Did I what?
You get your black belt?
I didn't get a black belt. No, no, I didn't go that far. I think I stopped at we had the money for it. I think I stopped at either the what was it, white belt or one after that. Either like the first stage or the one after that, and then we had to stop it because we couldn't afford it. So.
Yeah, I did taekwondo for a couple years when I was younger in grade
Hmm.
school. I got to red belt.
Red belt. Okay.
And I remember it was a big thing because I didn't want to continue because I wanted to play football.
Hmm.
I just like And I know my mother was mad. She was like, "You get this far?" I'm like, "No, I want to play football like where everybody else." Because I started off playing football, little league football, and then we moved out of the city. We moved to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, for a couple years, right? And there I started doing taekwondo. Came back to Buffalo, continued taekwondo. But then after a while, it's like, nah, man, I need I need to play some football.
Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, but it's cool. But anyway, y'all not here to talk about
No childhood stories
our
about
grade
our
school.
martial arts exploits.
Yeah. Everybody, their mama used to want to kick like Bruce Lee or Bruce Leroy if you was
That's
from
right.
Last Dragon. Everybody loved that. But y'all here to talk about politics. So there's a lot of things going down. We are going touching on a few issues. I want to talk about the backlash from for the progressives in Congress, specifically AOC. Also want to talk about the infrastructure bill or some of the proposals in that. Want to talk about the pressure from the left. Is it actually working on Biden? And is he actually moving when it comes to student loan forgiveness? Some positive development, but let's not celebrate yet.
Mm-hmm.
But first thing I want to do is talk about the George Floyd trial. Have you been keeping up to date with this trial?
So not too closely. Like I'm not watching it every day like some people are. I usually just try to like find the blurbs that come up here and there to see what's like I guess the summarizing it. But I can't really like I don't want to like I'm one of those people that didn't even see the video, for instance. Like I couldn't do that again. So I didn't see that, but I've been following like the blurbs here and there, seeing people that have been speaking on the witness stand, giving a testimony. How about yourself?
I've been keeping up with it a little bit. I don't watch it all day, but I keep up with it. For me, when it comes to this trial, I'm looking at the big picture. I don't want to get stuck on this particular case, even though it's such a horrible event. And it was one of the catalysts for the movement last summer. But my thing is, I always try to look at the bigger picture because and maybe you could say I'm overconfident, but I'm actually confident that we actually going to get a guilty verdict in this particular case. Now, will it be as much time that he should get? I'm not convinced of that yet, but I do think even the people empowered kind of came together and just be like, all right, we're going to throw this dude under the bus.
I wouldn't even say them under the bus. I would say this is the red meat for the baying tigers and lions and stuff more than anything else. So yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, Chauvin, you rarely see their peers speak out against them. And in this case, it's one of the rare cases that this has actually happened, that his peers, his supervisors are coming out and saying, no, what he did doesn't meet our code. He wasn't trained to do that, and so on and so on. So I do think this case he's going to be found guilty, but overall the problem still exists. So
yeah.
So what I'm interested in is not having another George Floyd, because it's so similar to Eric Gardner case, with the I can't breathe. Or we can name off name after name. Tamir Rice, his case just a few months ago was totally dismissed with the federal government not bringing any charges in his case either. And so it's still a big problem. If we do get a guilty verdict, I just don't want people to think, okay, the system is actually working, because it's not. This is a unique case, and just because of the uproar on it, I think it's just like a decision was made, like you said, maybe to just to feed us some red meat. But I want to focus on police reform.
Yeah,
that's something that we have to focus on. We have to focus on, okay, what is the use of force? Why are police officers not following the use of force? Or in a case like Freddie Gray, how do somebody just end up dead in your custody with a severe neck injury when there's so many cops on the scene and he was handcuffed? How does that happen? How do you not secure somebody, and how do nobody go to jail for that? And how do you blame the prosecutor, Marilyn Mosby at the time, for actually bringing up charges? They went after her viciously for actually bringing up charges against these police officers. So
she's still the attorney too. Actually, I think she's still the attorney in Baltimore.
Yep. So this is the larger issue, and don't get me wrong, I don't mean to sound cavalier about George Floyd as a person, because those videos is hard to watch, not just with the knee on his neck, but the videos.
Body cam.
Yep. Because in this trial, that's what we got to see that we didn't see before. When he's saying, "I'm not a bad guy," him being scared. I know I'm talking a lot, going on a little bit of tangent. One more thing I just want to say. The defense and some of the people, the usual suspects that don't want to acknowledge the problem, trying to say, okay, it was his opioid use, because him and his girlfriend admitted that they did have addiction to opioids. My response to that is, I don't care at all. That happened in the case. And the only reason I'm bringing that up is because that's the old playbook. It's not going to work in this case, I don't think. But I remember with George Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin, even though George Zimmerman wasn't a police officer, it was a racialized case. And one of the things they try to say, well, Trayvon Martin had marijuana in his system. And so I don't care. And when the police officer had them, did they use excessive force or did they not use excessive force? That's the only thing that should matter. Whether George Floyd was a good guy, bad guy, somewhere in between, it doesn't matter. What matters is the people that are getting paid with taxpayer money. Are they protecting all of our citizens?
Right.
That's the only thing that should matter.
Right.
And if you have a subject under control, are you using excessive force or not? Did your actions lead to that person's death? And even if it didn't, let's just say George Floyd survived. Chauvin should still go to jail.
Yeah. There's no other words. I mean, you stated everything, man. Like, the only thing I'll add is that it was such a weird and crazy confluence of events with the cell phone cameras that first we all saw everything that happened. A little bit of the trial. One of the people that were there was actually like an EMT, she actually is like an EMT a medic. So she testified. She was like, "Yeah, I told him I was an EMT medic. I wanted to help. I told him like you need to stop that. He couldn't breathe." She was saying she recognized all the stuff that was happening to him. That was like signs that he was like having trouble like breathing and living, and it was all totally ignored. So these are all like things that happen that further exacerbates like the law breaking that Chauvin, and not just Derek Chauvin, but all those police officers that were there contributed to. And I hope that Chauvin might be the one that gets the most severe punishment, but those other officers as well need to have like their accomplices. Like they are like literally accomplices to the crime. They're not charged as extensively as Chauvin is, but they need to be called accomplices to murder because that's what they did. But the bigger point here, and the reason why they're throwing them at us as like the thing to pacify us is that like they, there's a huge and grander problem of policing in this country. Derek Chauvin had no fear of going. We talked last episode about prison. And like, do you fear going to prison? You think this would lead people fearing going to prison? Derek Chauvin and those police officers had no fear of going to prison when they did that. And in Chauvin's instance, I think he had like 20 different like police write-ups for just write-ups from citizens about excessive force or other conduct and actions and so forth. So he had no concerns of that. And if you're gonna put George Floyd on trial and his past on trial in Derek Chauvin's murder case, then you need to talk about that as well. That Derek Chauvin has on paper documented history of people accusing him of doing acts that led up to this point. And so that's a problem with like policing this country. And the only way that these things are going to change is if we as if they are to be held accountable for their actions. And I'm not saying at all that George Floyd's death should be in vain. I'm not saying that we shouldn't be happy that this guy is going to probably go to prison over this. But what I will say is that there's more work that needs to be done, like you were mentioning, and there's more things that we need to do to ensure that we don't have any more of these instances. And it's like I said the last episode, we need to start, instead of working towards just like just we need to imagine society where we don't need policing and we don't need prisons and stuff, and start working towards that. Not that that has to go close tomorrow, but we need to start working towards that that dream that we don't need this stuff. And how do you do that? You make sure that police are actually like trained to serve the community instead of protecting and serving property, and not pulling guns out of people for allegedly counterfeit money, which is what happened in that instance. We need to make sure that we need to start investing in citizens and not in like the stuff that we invest our money in as a country now. That's like to me the biggest thing is like to start focusing on that and we just need to start imagining a society that doesn't need to have like police officers on the streets. I know that again, it sounds crazy, but we just need to start imagining how we can get to that vision and start trying to get to that vision. It's I know it may be altruistic and maybe too like idealistic, but I'm like, we have to start approaching things from that lens, and start trying to have a great society instead of start trying to like put band-aids on gunshot wounds. We gotta start thinking bigger than that.
Yeah, and for me, there's nothing wrong with the ultimate goal in Utopia, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what you said sound like Utopia, but there's nothing wrong with, okay, as human beings, right? What is the ideal situation we could live in a society? What's the best case scenario? It's okay to imagine that. Now,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, it's not realistic at this moment in time.
Right. Yeah.
And you take steps towards that. Like
Exactly.
a good step is, okay, let's just have a reasonable use of force module.
Exactly.
We start off with that, and hopefully, as generations go by, we advance as a species and actually think differently about certain issues,
Exactly.
and don't be so self-destructive. One of the things that I always think about is what the future is going to hold and how things are going to change. I think people, it's not just one group of people. I think everybody usually thinks of how things are now, and a lot of times we assume that it's always going to be like this.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, just think about in your lifetime. I'm a 36, almost 37-year-old man, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll be 37 next month. Just in my lifetime, there have been so many changes, from rotary phones to now, having one of these, you can see it, that's a major change right there. Just so many things. Like people said we'll never have a black president. Now, what his presidency was, that's something different. But
right,
just a whole bunch of stuff then changed, just from CDs to streaming services. There's been a lot of change, some positive, some negative, and the hope is that 100, 200, even 300 years down the line, hopefully we have destroyed the planet and human beings still exist,
right,
and we progress further. We think different about things. We hopefully it's not so selfish anymore, as a species.
Mm-hmm.
That's a utopia vision, and I doubt if I see it in my lifetime, but what I'm hoping is to see progress. And I think it's our job really just to do your little part, whatever that is. Everybody had different skills. Even if you feel that your part is just, controlling your little castle, your home, and raising your children with good values, whatever it is, we should try to make the next generation better and just make our species better. And hopefully, our offspring don't have to deal with the stuff we have to deal with.
Word. All right. That's succinct and perfect. Yeah. That's it. Just start that path now. And we can start that with doing stuff that makes sure that a George Floyd scenario doesn't happen again, or Amadou Diallo or whoever else, man. We have to make sure these things don't happen again. So
we can literally list off names for about an hour.
That would be the entire show.
And not even just one more thing before we get off this subject, and not even just the killings, right? I researched this a few years ago. Like the amount of money that cities pay off in wrongful lawsuits for excessive force is amazing. Like Chicago literally has spent hundreds of millions of dollars on wrongful use of force, corruption, for excessive force. Because you remember back in Chicago, it was a story that broke out that they used to have these little
secret prison, secret jail,
prisons, interrogating minors without their parents being there. We've seen that in New York with the Central Park 5 as well. So it's not just Chicago, but the money they pay for excessive force and just doing the wrong thing. Imagine if they could have invested the millions upon millions of dollars that they spent in these lawsuits in the community in Chicago. Maybe Rob Emilio went and closed 60-something schools. You could have put that money into schools. You could have put it into business loans or business grants in the community. It's just stuff like that drives me crazy.
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell, man. Like we put way too much money in policing, and like you're saying here, we put a lot of money in policing misconduct. Like they're municipalities that have that as a part of their budget.
Literally part of the budget, yeah.
Police misconduct, because they know that's going to happen a lot. So we gotta break that. We gotta stop doing that stuff, and we gotta start investing in people, investing in our citizens. So
yeah, and that's one of the goals of this channel. Like I just want people to just start thinking differently about politics, how we approach stuff. Don't be naive, but as you said, we can start thinking of a better future without being corny.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So the infrastructure bill, your boy Joey B.
Your boy
Joey B. Well, eventually we're gonna have to talk about his disastrous foreign policy, because he's been just as bad. Actually, you know what? Crazy. Joe Biden has actually been worse on foreign policy than I anticipated. I knew he was going to be bad, but he actually been worse. Yeah. But get your Q-tips ready. Something that you won't expect from me. He actually been better than I expected on domestic policy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's been good. Two different things. He been better than I expected. Now, what I expected was very low. It's a very low bar, but just the fact that we got something like the child tax credit pass, and kind of with monthly payments, I didn't expect that from a Joe Biden administration or the Democrats of Congress. To me, that's a big deal, because that's almost a precursor to UBI, getting people used to the idea. And UBI is one of my big goals. So that alone, and the money to Black farmers, which I didn't think would happen in his administration, too. Two excellent provisions. Of course, we didn't get the minimum wage. Of course, we didn't get student loan debt forgiveness, but we're going to talk about that later.
Right.
But overall, it's been better than I expected. And with this infrastructure proposal, it's some good stuff in there.
Yeah.
Got some money for the green economy. See my baby crying in the background. You hear that?
Yeah.
I told you around this time she gets it on. But Is some money for the green economy, which is um, which is good. Not as much as it should be.
Hmm.
Some money for affordable housing. Again, not as much money as it should be. But universal child care is a
Right.
proposal bill along with
Elder care.
infrastructure like roads and bridges. Overall, what do you think about this infrastructure proposal? And touch on Joe Biden's domestic policy, at least economically, because some of the social issues might be a little bit differently. Like he haven't done nothing on police reform, but like
Yeah.
his economically, has he been better, worse, or about what you expected?
Uh, he's been better. Well, he's been better, but the he's been better than I expected. The only reason why I'm having like a little bit of apprehension of going all the way is that uh we're in the middle of I mean, I keep saying it. We're in the middle of the depression, like a real depression. This the last years plus now has been like an economic catastrophe that has like impacted a lot of people. But you know, we really we talked about it before. We never really recovered from the 2008 Great Recession
Right,
at all. People will say, "Oh, well, the stock market went up and this went up and this was all good," but the people that were really impacted by it, that like lost homes and stuff, they lost homes and that never happened. Or the people that like, lost income after graduating from college during that period and entering the workforce, or graduating from high school and entering the workforce, you're never going to recover from that. It's just not going to happen. So has it's but he so we've been in this like real economic downturn for a very long time, but it hasn't really gotten the coverage because Amazon's made Amazons and all these big companies have made like more billionaires than we've ever had in our history, which is not a good sign at all. But going back to the Biden stuff, he's been better than I expected, and I give him that. And he's trying to really like do stuff to reverse the tide or at least stop the stream on some of these things that we've been that I mentioned earlier. As it relates to this infrastructure bill, there's good stuff in there. This is like the first time I think anyone's really had like a serious vision for climate. And we talk about like the research for climate, like the climate plans and other stuff. But the things that I think is like really going to be interesting. I don't know how it is in like in your part of the world, but like they're talking about a maglev line that connects Baltimore and DC and gets you from Baltimore to DC and like 10 minutes, and that's about 40 miles of like road, and it takes usually about 50 minutes on a non-traffic day, and in the traffic it might be like an hour plus. So imagine like you know going from that part of the country to that part of the area, it's DC to Baltimore in like 9 minutes.
right,
That's going to be really good for the environment. Now you have that network around the country. That's going to like bring so many cars off the road and be good in that regard. And not just the maglev, but I think other places are going to have like expanded like train lines. But that's going to be good for jobs. If you're working in one city and your job is in another city and you're concerned about how I'm going to get there, boom, you have this nice like transportation infrastructure that's going to bring you to a different part of the country to be able to work. So these things are really really important and are ways that like I think that these things could potentially like be like Biden's like Eisenhower when Eisenhower like built the interstate system in this country. These are things that'll like change lives and like bring us closer together, obviously, but also bring jobs to places that they weren't beforehand. So that's like really really positive. I think that our roads are obviously a mess. So putting money into that is a big deal. The affordable housing stuff as well is going to be important for people. He's putting a couple $100 million into that. So these are all like really really good things. But and there's always a but here. uh, you know, the question I have for you is this enough? I know that it's a
no,
two-part thing. This exactly. It's a two-part thing. I know it's this is the first rollout. It's about 2 billion, but is this enough? And you've already answered the question, no, and I agree.
Not even close, because the affordable housing is nice, but it's not going to solve the affordable housing crisis in this country. So it needs to be more money allocated. Matter of fact, Joe Manchin, his original proposal was basically double
hmm
what this proposal is. Biden is talking about what, about 2.5 trillion,
Yeah, 2.5
something
trillion.
like that. Um, and you got to think that's if they don't negotiate it down,
hmm
because there's always a possibility some provisions get taken out.
hmm
Um, with universal child care, would that stay in there? I haven't heard them say that they're going to put the $15 minimum wage in there.
They're not.
Um,
Right.
so I would love for baby bonds to get in there.
Mhm.
I love the baby bonds proposal. Um, as you see, I have a little one in the background. She will want that money when she get older, you know. Um, so there's a lot of things that could be added to this bill. Now, granted, they are talking about, because I think they can do reconciliation 3 times a year.
Yeah, that's what
So
they've
even after
decided
the
now.
transportation um, bill is passed, because I do believe it's going to get passed one way or the other. I don't know if it's going to be exactly what we want. We still have one more opportunity this year to get something through. Um, but that's an awful lot of risk, because you're using political capital. So anything you want, I would suggest you need to put it in this bill.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
that can actually go through reconciliation. Of course, other stuff you will have to, basically modify or repeal the filibuster, if you do that. But no, to answer, simply saying no, it is not enough. It's not even what Biden promised during his campaign.
Mm,
His original campaign, he said he wanted more money for infrastructure.
hmm
But it's the one positive I will say. The original 1.9 trillion with the stimulus package or the American Rescue Plan, I thought they was going to negotiate that down, but turns out they actually spent that amount of money.
hmm
So if that continued trend, they might actually get the 2.5 trillion total. The only thing is, with Manchin already talking about lowering the corporate tax rate. I know Biden wanted at 28, Manchin talking about 20
25.
25. And I know that's part of the reason, that's partly how Biden plans to fund it. To me, I don't even mind deficit spending. It's not a big deal to me at all. And I don't even think
Not a
those,
big deal.
and I know some progressives are really on the corporate tax rate, getting it back to 35%. But truth be told, most corporations are paying that 35% anyway. It's more important to get rid of the loopholes. Now, what they did, Trump lowered the tax rate and still got the loopholes, and even added
Added
more.
more loopholes. Yeah, he added
Added
way
more.
more loopholes. And I think from what I've read about that is that Biden he's trying to get like a global tax rate on corporations, which may work out.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know.
I just don't know how you enforce that though.
That's key. And then secondly, even if it's a global tax rate, like you're mentioning earlier, and like we talked beforehand, like the biggest thing are these loopholes, and how are these people getting out of paying their taxes?
Right.
What good is what you can have 80% tax rate on every like over $500 billion of revenue or whatever, or $500 million of revenue or whatever. If there are loopholes in there that they can buy the way out of, then what's the point of it? They're not going to be paying that tax over their revenue cap limit or whatever. So I think the thing that's not being discussed there is like how do we close this stuff? And I know that wasn't. I know Biden's talking about closing the Trump era loopholes, but it's like, well, what about the loopholes that were there before Trump was in office? I think that a lot of like liberals, uh, like we talked about before, they tend to think Trump was the boogeyman, and like all the bad things that have happened in America started like when he was like the president, and we're like, nah, there are many more things that like this pattern has been a 40 somebody. Like I remember reading stories in the 90s when or 80s, 90s, 80s, the 90s and early 2000s when like you would hear like companies like Nike and uh um like old school Apple, all these major Microsoft and so forth weren't paying taxes on their stuff. So this has obviously been a problem for a very long time in this country. And so the key now is like, well, it's a problem. Let's like figure out how we close these loopholes. Let's like figure out how we can make sure this is all like on the up and up. And I think that the global 25% is a great start on that. But now it's like, well, let's move further. Let's like think like what we can do domestically and so forth. I'm glad he's talking about executive loopholes as well. I think that's another thing that we've that has definitely like been a mess. But there's more work that needs to be done. Just outside of like just raising this limit to 25 or 35 or whatever. And I'm one of those that would like want to see it back to like 50 or 60%. I know that never happened, but I'd love to see that. But I know it's not. And I know that's not the big issue here. So I want to see us like tackle the loopholes.
Yeah, yeah. So, like you said, the loopholes is the big thing with me. Where the actual percentage ends up, gravy. I know they're gonna raise, like they should raise, because if Manchin giving in with 25, so
Mm-hmm.
most likely it's gonna be at least 25. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so that
How do you feel about these figures though, man? Like $115 billion to modernize like highways and roads and bridges, 50 million for resiliency, 50 billion for resiliency. Like these are like these America's a big ass country. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, it needs to
I
be
know
more.
yeah, I know for instance, in DC, for instance, we have the metro system down here. And so I'm going to read the plan real quick, but I know it was like $85 billion for doubling the funding for public transit in this country and modernizing it. And that's great. But like the metro system down here costs a couple $1 billion to operate every year. And there are other areas around the country that have like metro systems like that are bigger than ours. Um, so when you see like $85 billion and it's supposed to be over a period of years, it's just a very, very like small scale number. And I'm really confused as to why he shot so low on this.
Right. And
Unless
I
it's
believe what is it's supposed to be for 8 years. I believe
yeah,
the
8 years.
proposal for. Yeah, it's not enough at all. And you have countries in Europe that have high speed rail. Like the fact that we don't have high speed rail already is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I know. Speaking of like
Shoot,
thinking,
Brazil has like apparently has a better transit system we do, and it's Brazil, and they've had it for a very long time. And
right, we don't
you know,
even have high speed rail yet, and people is already talking about the hyperloop, stuff like that. For those you don't know, is this thing where like it's a tube, and you're supposed to be able to shoot maybe from one side of the country to the other, and real fast, maybe like from New York to LA, maybe in 45 minutes, or even going to different countries like extremely fast. Um, so there's people already thinking about that. Like I said, we don't have basic high speed rail. We still
mm-hmm,
dealing with Amtrak that takes forever.
mm-hmm.
You know, um, you would think he'll have more money dedicated towards that. They do call him Amtrak Joe, right?
Right,
Or,
right.
or did he call himself that?
He calls himself that. I take the Amtrak every weekend back home to Delaware. See my
Right,
family.
right. So, um, I don't, I don't know. We just need to imagine better. Like by the time we get high speed rail, it'd probably be new technology,
Yeah.
and the other countries be on to something new by the time we get that.
Even there's like stuff in there about broadband access as well, which is good. Again, these are I'm not like these things that he's putting in there, like don't get us wrong. Like anybody listen, don't get us wrong. Like we're not saying these aren't things that you shouldn't fund, but this is a big ass country. Like there are a lot of people in this country that rely on these different things, that need these different things. And to shoot so low like you did, it's kind of like jarring. you kind of wonder if he's like, well, I'm going to do this for as long as I'm alive, and if what happens afterwards, I don't know. But he just shot so low on so many things that it's kind of like I'm just confused, really. Why he's thinking like that? But I'm sure it'll pass. I'm sure that it'll pass at 2.5 billion too. I know he has a part 2 coming out sometime this month, so we'll see the numbers.
I kind of know why, because he comes from older generation.
For sure, yeah,
Even some people in my family that's a little bit older that said, "Man, the only thing Biden doing right now is spending money." Like older people in my family have said that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like people in the older generation, I think it's hard for them to wrap their mind about how much money need to be spent. But with some of them might not be taken into the account that so many areas been underinvested for decades on it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is decades worth of work that need to be invested.
Mm-hmm.
So like this is needed. This is definitely needed. I mean, what's the last big projects we had? No, Eisenhower had the highway system, which it was some problems with that. But But what you had the highway project. You had some of the stuff with the Great Society that was more for like Medicaid, Medicare. You had civil rights when it came to that. But we really need major infrastructure. Like there's so many neighborhoods and just whole cities and towns that is just devastated all across the country.
Yeah.
I believe what is it 200 billion he got in there for like housing?
Yeah.
Not enough.
And when you I was listening again, we talk about democracy now. I was listening to, I can't remember the brother's name, but he was Bernie Sanders economic advisor for his campaign and stuff. And how you feel about Bernie Sanders, that's neither here nor there, but he pointed out that like, the $200 billion we have in housing, for instance, is like I think around 1% of our GDP. You know what I mean? Like of our annual GDP. Like that's spaced over time. So like this whole plan, our GDP last year is about $20 trillion. That's how much we our gross domestic product was. This $2 trillion that's spread over 8 years is a pittance. If you look at it in that standpoint, I know like people talk about stuff in terms of like business or your finances and so forth, but these are like our pittance to like how much our GDP is. And so if you're not thinking about things on that scale and you're spending like a percent or under on these major things that are gonna really affect the livelihoods of Americans, you're like, this is all like just very small scale stuff that it in a lot of ways, honestly, like, and I hate to say this, but it felt like it was a like I promised that during the campaign, so box checked, and let's move on to something else now. And I feel like that's a problem in politics, and especially like the Biden era of politics, where they make these like plans and say they're going to do it. It's just ticking a box and moving on instead of like really having a deep thought about how you can really make a legacy that's like gonna be like long lasting. So it's just something that when I first saw the price tag and saw what he's spending on, I was like, this is not enough. There can be it could be more.
And it's crazy because I'm trying to articulate this the right way. So we should be pushing Biden, and it's not enough, and we should criticize. But one of the things that I guess I go around my head is what did I honestly expect from a corporatist like Joe Biden?
Yeah.
It's like, okay, we knew what we was getting. Well, I won't say we did. We did, but a lot of people that voted for him may not. But you can only expect so much for Biden. So the fact that we even got this, I'm actually shocked. I don't want to just I just don't want to seem like I'm settling, but like, to be honest, this is about the best case scenario
Mm.
when it comes to like investment. You probably could hope for somebody like Biden, to be honest. And again, primaries is important. Primaries is very, very important.
I agree. And that's just make sure you know who you're voting for, y'all. It's
Right.
very critical because I don't, like you're saying, a lot of people aren't aware of who they're voting for, and to see the letter beside her name or the name recognition and jump on that. Nah, it's like much more than that. So
All
yeah.
right. Bear with me 1 second. I'm going to remove you and add you back. Try to get your, the sound synced again. Give me 1 second. All right.
Yo. Can you hear me? Testing 1 2 1 2.
Yep, I could hear you. The sound was just out of sync a little
It was
bit.
off. Okay.
Yeah. So it seemed to be good now.
Okay.
All right. Now, speaking of primaries, there's been a lot of backlash for progressives from, one of Biden's primary challengers in Bernie Sanders to especially AOC, and just progressives in general in Congress. There's been a lot of backlash. A lot of it stems from forced to vote before Congress even got in session. There's people unhappy with progressives in Congress for not forcing to vote for Medicare for all. My feelings on that was that it wasn't going to pass. I mean, I wasn't against it, but I didn't see it as the end all to be all like some people did. But from there, from the $15 minimum wage not being put in the American Rescue Plan, a lot of the leftists are becoming unhappy with some of the progressive representation in Congress, and it seemed like AOC is getting the majority of the hit. There's been several stories about her donating to, Democrats in Congress, about 160,000. There was just a article that came out stating that she was one of the least effective members in Congress. And even surprisingly, a lot of progressives are picking up on that and using that against her. I don't know how you feel about that, but to me, I think that's a bit unfair for a number of different reasons. Number one, she only been in Congress for
this is the third year.
Third year, right?
Yeah.
And granted, some people may argue like somebody like Rashida Tlaib was ranked higher on that. And I like Rashida Tlaib. I probably like Rashida Tlaib more than AOC. I probably like Ayanna Pressley more than AOC, to be honest. But that doesn't mean that AOC is bad.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
She's a third year. And don't get me wrong, I have criticism of AOC. I'm going to get to some of those. But this is her third year. I almost think people expect too much of her, to be honest. I think people overestimate the power that she has. There was also criticism of her with the open seat in the open congressional seat in Louisiana about progressives not endorsing the progressive candidate there. So yes, some of these criticisms is legit, but others, like her effectiveness in Congress, I'm like, okay, what was she really going to get past during the Trump era?
Exactly.
And even I think somebody, I don't know who said it. Well, Bernie Sanders was the Amendment King, but I was like, yeah, but was he the Amendment King after the establishment labeled him public enemy number one? Because before that, he was in Congress, but most people never even heard of Bernie Sanders before he ran for president in 2015 and then 2016. But after that, I mean, I know him and Ro Khanna did get Amazon to raise the minimum wage, but it wasn't an official bill that passed. It was
Mm-hmm.
just public pressure. So I don't. I'm saying that to say this. Yes, we can have criticism of her. The criticism that I just have, she was talking about the border, and that horrible situation is going on in the border, and she was saying how those families need reparations. And I'm just like, that's the wrong word to use, especially because you don't really go hard on reparations for Black people. Every time you ask about it, you give this long, convoluted answer. So if you're not prepared to really speak on reparations for the main group that is pushing it, you probably should use different language when it comes to reparations, when it comes to the border. And I'm not even against it. And I do think those families that were separated should be compensated. I'm not against that. But, if you're not going to speak out about reparations for, Black people in America, shouldn't use that in the border because you just opened up a can of worms. It's bad politics and it's wrong. My main criticisms are sometimes she, in interviews, she could kind of step on her words. And I want to talk because I can do that too. But when you're in politics, some of the framing is important. I think sometimes she off with her framing a little bit. But I think I know I'm kind of all over the place, but hopefully you get my point. I think there's legitimate criticism of her, but I think people was going overboard at the same time too.
Mm-hmm.
Too much blame on her.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. What you think about the criticism that she and progressives been getting so far?
Well, if you're talking about, we talked before, and you're talking about like the YouTube progressives, like the Kyle Kinsley and Jimmy Dores and people of that ilk. I feel like a lot of them, and I'm one of those that like I don't necessarily think that they like know politics that well. I know it sounds like bizarre and fucked up, but they have these platforms and they jump out there, but they don't understand how these things like move. I'm not sure how much you can ask of a freshman congressperson that's only been in Congress now for, look at the calendar, 14 months. I'm sorry, not 14 months. 26 months to influence like major bills and pass major bills and so forth. That doesn't even make sense. That's not how this works, especially the Democratic Party, where they value seniority over people that have the energy behind them. If you look at she tried to get these seats on these different chairs on I think it was on the House. Was it the Ways and Means? Try to get the chair seat on. I can't remember the seat that she went up against Richard Neal. I'm blanking.
Yeah.
It was like Ways and Means.
Mm-hmm. I believe she was trying to get in the Ways and Means Committee. Yep.
Right. She was trying to get a seat on there, and they blocked her. These like real like old corporate Dems blocked her because the ideology of the Democratic Party. So I can't criticize a freshman or now second term congressperson for not getting stuff accomplished. The other thing too, you mentioned Bernie Sanders and his influence on getting Amazon to move a certain direction. I made a joke on the site we both were on, but like I feel like the Democratic Party, even though he may not have the bills passed for him, but I feel like the Democratic Party is like, it's kind of like Bernie Sanders' party now, in a lot of ways. And the stuff that he's advocated for and asked for. I know it's not Medicare for all, for instance, or universal health care, but do you think like Biden would have a $2 trillion, and that wasn't enough either, but do you think Biden would have a $2 trillion stimulus plan if it wasn't for like Bernie Sanders, clamoring for it, asking for it, and being out there up in front street for it? Do you think like, we were just criticizing how small the infrastructure plan is, but it's still like a big plan in terms of like how America has operated the last 40 years. This is like Bernie Sanders' like influence. These are all, even asking for a raise in the corporate tax, and Biden saying like he said in the press conference a couple of days ago that it's messed up that these companies aren't paying taxes. That's Bernie Sanders. I can't imagine Barack Obama saying that in 2014 or 15 or whatever, but that's Bernie Sanders' like influence. So in a lot of ways, you're seeing the House pass a lot of like bills that maybe they know it's not going to pass the Senate, but they're passing bills that are like pretty progressive, and that's not because of like that has to come from somewhere, because that wasn't what they were doing beforehand. I think that's like a lot of the influences from the progressive Congress people. So you know, there are criticisms to be had of them. Then I'm like, yeah, like I agree with you about how she's felt about reparations. I think that also she's not like she's not as articulate on things that she thinks she is sometimes, and that always kind of concerns me when I hear her like give interviews. You get some people are smooth, and maybe that's because she's
Right.
young and she's not like from the politician school like a lot of other people are. But sometimes when she'll hear a question during an interview, and you can kind of see the gears moving in her head. You know what I mean? I can't really like point it out, but like it's not she's not as smooth as like other people are with that stuff. That's like her being inexperienced, which is what you
Yeah.
expect. Um, you know, I for the life of me, I think the left, and I consider myself part of the left, but I think that there's like the social media influencer left. I feel like they don't really understand how this thing like kind of works in a lot of ways, and also, and what always concerns me with those people is that um, if you ask them what's going on in their communities, they don't have any comments. If you ask them, for instance, in New York State, for instance, uh, we were talking before the show. A lot of workers and across the state, but particularly from New York City, they had a hunger strike for about a month, where they had a hunger strike because they weren't included in the new and the I always want to call it the CARES Act. I know it's not the CARES Act, but in the recent
American Rescue Plan.
Rick Rescue Plan, yeah, Rick Rescue Plan that was just passed last month. They weren't included in it because they don't have pay stubs, and they can't. They get paid through cash. So these are people that are undocumented workers. These people that clean houses. These are people that do food delivery or other delivery services that aren't like Grubhub or all this other stuff. You know, they get paid in cash, and they weren't getting pay stubs, and they had a hunger strike for about a month where they were demanding, like, Governor Cuomo in New York State and the New York General Assembly to include money for them because they are struggling as well, and they are in essence essential workers. They just aren't seen as that because they're not getting pay stubs, or we aren't talking about them in the media and so forth. And they went on a hunger strike for about a month, and in the recent bill, they actually got included in it. They got a lot of money going their way now because they're like, yeah, we need this money because we haven't gotten stuff. I don't, I may be wrong, but I'm not sure if those people have talked about these things or talk about I think isn't I'm gonna say Jimmy Dore. Is Jimmy Dore not is out in L.A., right? Jimmy Dore, the that guy.
Yeah, I believe he's in LA.
So was there any comment from him about the Echo
I don't
Park?
watch the show. I don't know.
Okay. So the point I'm getting at
I
here,
do know just the clips that he is highly critical of AOC, especially when it came to force the vote. I do know that
right?
part.
So
Yeah,
the point I'm getting at here is that these people uh look up at Congress and see like people like AOC or Ayanna Pressley or Rashida Tlaib or Mondare Jones or whoever else um, up there now and criticize them. And I'm like, hey, dog, like these things are happening in your community. Like there's an unhoused crisis that's going on in LA right now and in DC right now, or wherever else. And they're not focused on that. They're focused on attacking the people up there. So it's like, well, what are you like? These are things that you can actually like go into your community and do stuff for. And like you were saying earlier, um, primaries are important, right? So are local races, and these people don't seem to be that like concerned with that stuff for some reason. I can tell you why. I just know that that's like a thing that they're not, because I guess the views come in from saying something about AOC or the Squad or other progressives in Congress and attacking them. Um, yeah, I always wonder, like, I like this podcast because we talk about stuff that's going to be like more widespread, and it's thinking more of like, yeah, let's do stuff at this level, and let's like worry about our castle at home, and let's worry about our community. And I feel like those people in those platforms don't think like that. They think that like the answer is like to just uh yell at the federal government and not yell at like their city council members or their county council members or whoever else, and or their mayors or local state reps, state
Yeah.
house reps. You know, that's where the IRA I think needs to go, and they don't focus on that.
Yeah, and you know, some of them is better than others. But one of the things, especially in the American Rescue Plan, the provision for Black farmers. Now, some of them did mention it, and
Mhm.
but you know, hardly nobody was talking about the Justice for Black Farmers bill. I've been one of the only people. I've been hammering that for a long time.
Mhm.
And part of the American Rescue Plan, they put some of those provisions in there. So, like, I was just thinking, like, if I was a member of Congress, would I voted against that to get the $15 minimum wage when that might be one of the only opportunities to actually get money for Black
Yeah,
farmers that
exactly.
need it? Because it's not a clean, like, these votes is not clean, right?
Mhm.
It's messy. We
Mhm.
didn't get the $15 minimum wage, but we got the child tax credit and we
Mhm.
got the money for Black farmers. Do I expect somebody like Corey Bush or Jamal Bowman, you know, two progressive Black members, to vote against that and risk not having Black people, Black farmers getting some money that they deserve, that they've been historically discriminated against? It's a hard ask to ask that. And I think some of it is because some we talked about this before, like some of the divide between Black politics and progressive politics. It should be more aligned, but there is some division on both sides. Uh,
Mhm.
I feel like um, some of these progressive um, people on YouTube don't quite understand like Black politics. Some of them just think class solve everything, or that you know these universal programs solve everything without taking into account historical discrimination
Right.
and the state that these issues are in the Black community, just like Medicare for All. Medicare for All is not going to stop the discrimination that Black people face from providers, which
Mhm.
you know studies prove out that we get treated worse when we go to the doctor. You know,
Exactly.
so those things that you have to take into consideration is complex. A lot of these issues is more complex than people give credit for. And don't get me wrong, because I don't want to sound like I'm shielding for these corporate Democrats, because some of them is just corrupt. It's no excuses. And I don't like the way these bills is set up at all. Where I'm coming from is should AOC, Rashida Tlaib, Jamal Bowman, Corey Bush, Ayanna Presley, um, you know, should they have voted against the American Rescue Plan to get the $15 minimum wage and risk like some of those other provisions, like actually giving critical money to states, and the relief checks that people really needed. And some people's getting up to what, $5,000 if you have a certain amount of kids, you know?
And to
That
be
would have
clear,
been politics.
they did vote for $15 minimum wage in that plan, didn't they?
They
I'm
did.
pretty sure. Yeah. So I'm kind of also like they did vote for it. It's not like it wasn't
But
them. It
what
was
they wanted them to do is do like Joe Manchin is and threaten to vote against the bill if you didn't add the $15 minimum wage. Where I come down on that, it's just like politically, would that have worked? Would
no,
people would
no.
have supported them, or would they blame them for holding it up? Especially you got to remember with the corporate media, sometimes you got to pick your battles, and like you know, unfortunately, the progressive space is not big enough to support them
Right.
if they did something like
Right.
that.
Exactly. I think a lot. Honestly, like they talk about the conservative echo chamber a lot, and like people that are in that either you know everybody's in their echo chamber, and I feel like a lot of them are stuck in their echo chambers. And it's just weird. Like I don't I it's just weird to me like how you I don't know. I can't really say too much. It's just a very like weird thing to like be critical of these people over when like there are millions of people that are going to need help for this. And And like I'm one of those that, you know, we don't need $15 minimum wage. You need like a lot more, and if really we need like stronger labor laws, people can you know get stuff and unions and so forth. That's a whole different argument. But you know, we're in a really critical point right now. A lot of people like suffered the last year, and I think that sometimes, and especially with those people, and they make a lot of money, dog. Like I don't know how else to put it, but they make a lot of money doing this stuff and saying these things, and it doesn't impact them that you know, somebody with like 3 or 4 kids is getting a credit on her, is getting like cash on hand for having these children as a part of child tax credit. Like, it doesn't affect them at all, because you know, they're making upwards of six figures, and in some instances are able to buy $1 million homes and stuff for themselves. And that's not me hating on them at all, but it's more so saying that the reality is a situation for people that aren't in that level, and you have to pass these bills, and it's going to be messy and nasty, but you're going to have to pass these bills to make sure that people are able to pay rent next month, or do these things that are going to be critical for their current livelihood. And I feel like sometimes that these people and that level kind of miss that, you know. And it's ironic because they talk about class and all this stuff, so forth, but they miss that. They miss that basic stuff sometimes. And yeah, man, I kind of get frustrated when I hear stuff like that. And that's not me defending the squad. That's not me defending any progressive congressperson. It's just more so me like thinking practical. Like, these people need help, man. Like, and you know, throwing up a stink because the Senate won't take up the $15 minimum wage. Because again, they voted for it. You know what I mean? They actually did vote for it in the House. It's just that the Senate mansion and its people like said no, we're not doing it, and the parliamentary rules and all this other nonsense. But they did vote for it. So it's like, what are you upset at them over? Like, are you upset at them over because you didn't, because they're not like on your show? Is that it? I'm just curious. That's kind of what when I hear stuff like this, I'm kind of curious if that's what it is. I don't necessarily feel like it's
You know, I think some of them are legit frustrated and have grievances. Because I think some people legitimately feel like that they should willpower, like somebody like Bernie Sanders. Why couldn't he do what Joe Manchin do, threaten to vote against it and get a provision in? I guess the argument would be that there was a lot of progressive things in the bill. We just didn't get everything that we wanted in there. So that's the argument. But like, if you care, like, and this is the other thing, there's so many different issues that we need to address in this country. A lot of times, only a few issues get highlighted. The $15 minimum wage is one of them. And it definitely should be. It should be more than that, like you said. $15 an hour in an expensive city like DC or a expensive city like New York is not enough. You know, it should actually be higher. But you know, there's so many other issues. Like I said, the black farmers, the police reform. Like, would they have agreed, right? Like, because we desperately need police reform. Should we have told on the press, all the black members of Congress, and like the couple black senators we have, I'm not even gonna count Tim Scott, but let's just say Cory Booker's not really progressive. Let's just say Cory Booker, because he's a black senator, right? Should we have said, okay, Cory Booker or any progressive member of Congress, even Bernie Sanders, right? If you don't put a vote up for police reform, hold up this rescue plan, because that's important for tons of people that look like me and you. That's a critical issue. It's a life and death issue, actually. A life and death issue. But none of us said hold up that bill for that, just because we understand that people like us too need financial relief. And we will still take up that issue at a later time. You know what I'm saying? Not even a later time. We're taking up that issue now. We're keeping that pressure there. We still criticizing the folks that's not there. And we putting pressure on them. But like, okay, when it comes down to it, with certain bills, should you vote against it, and what would the reaction be? Um, like I'm an avid supporter of reparations. Avid supporter. There's no reason why Black people in this country shouldn't have reparations. But understand, if we're going to get that, a bill passed, you can't call it reparations. Now, it wouldn't pass in the Senate. It just wouldn't. I'm smart enough to
Yeah.
understand that. If you have, especially a cash reparation bill, now you can do stuff like you do for the Black farmers, put it in without calling it reparations, and then the Republicans catch it late. By the time they catch it, it's too late. You have to be creative with the way you do it. You know what I'm saying? There's things we could do. We could put pressure on them, criticize them. I don't mind that, but I just want the criticism to be fair.
Yeah.
That's
Especially
it.
when you don't have the numbers elsewhere. Like you gotta be crafty like that. Like if we had 63 senators as the Democrats and they were all progressives, then it's like, all right, well, let's go for it. Let's go for it. Let's do stuff. And if you're not doing that, then it's like, yeah. But at this point, you gotta unfortunately play the margins like that and try to be crafty and creative and getting stuff you want to accomplish. So yeah, there are criticisms that you can have of these people, and I'm all for it. Like I kind of look at Rashida Tlaib, and I'm kind of not Rashida Tlaib. I'm sorry, Ilhan Omar, and I'm kind of like I don't really like your foreign policy stuff that much sometimes. Like I think you kind of could think differently about some of the stuff you've like supported and voted during your first term. But I'm not gonna like you can have these criticisms of people, but not say that they need to go or call them like monsters. I think that it's this weird thing that people that are very active online do where they forget nuance. They forget that like you can't criticize people but still see like what they're trying to do.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I will give like Cenk Uygur, even Kyle Kalinske, because they was two of the people that founded Justice Democrats. So they actually did show some action in doing stuff. You know what I'm saying? So I at least respect that. And I know Cenk tried to do all. He even tried to run for Congress.
Federal Congress, yeah.
So I give people credit where credit is due as well. But yeah, some of the other people, I don't know how much they really trying to do in their communities or as well. So, but the last thing before we get out of here, speaking of pressure, you don't give up. Like the pressure seemed to be getting to the Biden administration. Now we got to see the results when it comes to student debt forgiveness, but it seems that he said that his education secretary is going to look and see if he can legally forgive the debt, and he can.
Yeah.
It could be looked at one or two ways, right? It could be a stalling tactic, or they might really be doing it. And they actually said they're looking into 50,000 because that's what Chuck Schumer and Elizabeth Warren been hammering, and that's good for them. Those two senators been, and I'm not even a Chuck Schumer fan,
Mm-hmm.
but he been good on this issue. Like I
He doesn't
said,
want to be primary. That's the thing. He's trying to get primary next year, which is
right,
fine. Which is
the
fine. Yeah.
threat of the AOC primary, even though he would be AOC,
Yeah, I agree with that.
but he doesn't want to get primary by her.
Mm-hmm.
So he is trying to show some progressive chops. But on this issue, credit where credit is due. They've been constantly talking about it, and it looks like Biden is giving in a little bit, maybe. Now, do you think he's giving in, or you think this is more of a strong attack?
I don't trust him because everything about what he's been saying, damn near like the last 5 years, has been very like you need to pull yourself up out of bootstraps. Like it's your fault that you're in a situation and all this stuff. He's been very consistently like anti like the problems that college students and college graduates have had with student loans and all this stuff. Like he's of all the things that you can say Joe Biden has no like real ideology or philosophy on, he's been very consistent about that. You know what I mean? So him considering it's a great first step, and I'm glad that he is, and I'm glad that they put enough pressure on him to make him think about it. If anything, I can see him doing something like $10,000 or $15,000 of forgiveness and not going all the way to $50,000. That's just the way I can kind of see him like weaseling his way out of it. But I don't see any chance of him doing it. But I'm glad that like he's at least considering it. But like I said, the one thing that man's been consistent on is like his like other uncare of like concern about student loan debt. He's been very vocal about that since damn near since he's been vice president.
I tend to agree with you. The only reason I have just a smidget of hope for this, just a smidget, not much. You know, there's been a lot of reports coming out that he planned to run again. Unbelievably, he planned to run again in 2024, which I did not see coming, which I think is crazy. But he'll be like 82, right?
Yeah.
Good God. But
can't get rid of the boomers, man.
Apparently, he's planning to run again in 2024. Apparently, right? So I think he knows to win that he will need a certain amount of young people to come out. And this time you don't have the Trump boogeyman. Because unless Trump is the nominee again, but who knows who's going to be the nominee in 2024?
Matt Gaetz.
Matt Gaetz. Oh, we ain't man.
I just want to say it. That's all.
Talk about wow. That is wow right there.
We'll leave it at
family
that.
Values, right? The party of family values, right?
Right.
Yeah, you know, family values. You know, I guess sex trafficking. And,
not a big deal. That's a part of family values.
Yeah. But anyway, you know, it's not going to be the Trump boogeyman. Maybe it might not be the Trump boogeyman in 2024. So he's going to need people motivated to come out. Student loan debt forgiveness might motivate young people to come out. Now, he doesn't need like young people in crazy numbers, but he needs to at least maintain them, you know, and that might help. And it might help in the midterms too. That might be one of the reasons that Chuck Schumer is pushing it so hard as well, because, you know, the party in power tend to get clobbered during off year or congressional elections, you know. So that might be one of the things they try and do to help motivate the base to come out and vote if they do some type of student loan forgiveness. That's the only reason I got a smidget of hope. But, you know, Democrats tend not to do things that smart. No. So who knows?
I'll say this one thing though. We're going back about like people criticizing Bernie Sanders earlier, but who was the one that said this on the campaign trail? Again, like he's not, he may not be passing the bills like people are saying. He's not getting things done like Joe Biden was saying on the campaign trail, but these are things that have his tentacles on it, and you got to just again give that guy credit for even getting this to that point, because this definitely wasn't in Chuck Schumer's mind a couple of years ago. And like I said before about Biden, he's shown utter disdain for the problems of people that have student loan debt. Like he just doesn't care, and it's kind of disgusting that people have student loan debt. But you know, that's something that when you talk about influence, like that's influence, in my opinion. So with Biden, if he's able to find in his conscience do that, that's what it comes down to, because it's not a legal matter. We know it's not a legal matter. It's a conscious matter. I think they just forgave about $1 billion of debt for people that were grifted at for-profit colleges a couple weeks ago. So like obviously the capabilities there, just the wherewithal and the will to do it. So
I think they already forgave debt for
for-profit colleges.
Yeah. And for disabilities, Americans with disabilities, I believe, as well. So they could do it. They know they can do it. So it is a stalling tactic. So we'll see. We'll see. Hopefully,
I'm sure it's just people talking to him, trying to get in his ear some more and try to like convince him that you need to do this. That and like you said, if that and maybe in his mind it's like, well, you know, I want to have a successful presidency. So if I can get young people to vote next year, and this is a way, then let's go ahead and younger people to vote next year, and this is the way. Let's go ahead and do it. And also attached to that, like if you are able to pass this, if I pass this, you vote my people in, we're going to do more of a student student loan debt with regards to like future students and all that stuff, and make it actual laws and try to change things. That could be a way he can think about it. So I'm hopeful. I really am. Again, the only thing I've ever heard him consistent about is his disdain for people that have student loans. That's the only thing I've ever been consistent.
And because of him, you can't student loans
Can't file bankruptcy.
bankruptcy too.
Mm-hmm.
Along with that credit card bill. Yeah. Terrible.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. Any last words before we get out of here?
Nothing much, man. Another good episode. Another great. Good seeing you again, man. Hopefully, the Chauvin decision goes the right way. Hopefully, we can get some. Hopefully, there's more to do with the infrastructure bill. But the country's in a very precarious state. But the one thing I'm positive about, and I will say, is that they may not be doing a lot to push it along, but I think that people are like aware of that and that are elected officials, and they're trying to do something. It's not enough, but they are trying, and it's better than having like 4 years of. Put like this: the way Biden is moving, we're like having like real discussions over and being like, "Come on, man! Like you can do more," or "All right, that's good." Compared to like the last 4 years when we've been all kind of like graying and pulling our hair out at all the stuff the hijinks that was happening and stuff. So, it does feel a lot better to be having these conversations versus like having the WTF conversations about whatever Trump was trying to pull and stuff and being scared for your livelihood. So, so just kind of, we've been very critical, but just remember that as well. Like we're mentally like in a much better place than we were 4 years ago. But there's more to do. There's definitely more to do.
Oh, yeah, HR1. We have to talk about that every time.
HR1 and the 40 back.
Yep. The Republicans are trying to bring back Jim Crow voting laws.
Yeah.
So let's, hopefully that passed too. They need to do something about the filibuster to get that passed. Mm-hmm. So that's all I have for today. Thanks for tuning in, Polly with us. Subscribe, share. I'm definitely trying to grow the channel. Thanks for the support. Peace.